She told me she was going to visit her mother. It was a Thursday night, close to midnight. We were both in the kitchen, her suitcase sitting by the counter, half open. She said her mother was sick again. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded. I'd met her mother a few times, a quiet woman who always looked slightly uncomfortable around me. There was something distant about their relationship too, something polite and performative. But it wasn't my business. Or maybe I just told myself that. I remember she seemed calmer than usual that night. Not worried, not sad. Just quiet, focused. She folded her clothes with this mechanical precision, not a wasted movement, not a single hesitation. I watched her for a while. She didn't look at me much. I offered to drive her to the station, but she said no, she'd call a cab. Said it was late. Didn't want to trouble me. I didn't insist. I told her to call me when she got there. She said she would. She did in single quotes the first day felt strange, but not unusual. We'd been apart before, small trips, business visits, family things. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I went through the motions: work, meals, sleep. But I kept checking my phone. It wasn't that I expected constant updates. I just thought she'd message once. Maybe tell me she'd arrived, that her mother was stable. Something simple, but there was nothing. I called once, the next morning. It rang, no answer. I didn't leave a voicemail. By the afternoon, I got a text: sorry, things are hectic here. I'll call later. She did in single quotes. By the second day, something started to feel off. I couldn't pinpoint what. The silence, maybe, or the way she worded her messages. Short, neutral, almost impersonal, like someone trying not to give away too much. I tried to brush it off. People get busy. She was with her mother. Maybe she was tired. I went out that night, met a friend for a drink. He asked where she was. I told him she'd gone to visit family. He nodded, didn't say much. I realized I didn't even know how long she planned to stay. A few days, a week. She hadn't said. I hadn't asked. Out by the fourth day, the house started to feel wrong. It wasn't loneliness, not exactly. It was the absence of her rhythm. I knew how she moved through our space, the soft sound of her steps, the quiet clink of dishes, the way she hummed when she thought she was alone. Without her, the air felt stagnant, too still. I noticed the little things she'd left behind: a hairbrush on the counter, a sweater draped over the back of a chair, a cup on the bedside table with faint lipstick on the rim. I didn't touch them. I just let them sit there, like small ghosts of her presence. On the fifth day, she posted something online. A picture. Nothing unusual. Just a plate of food, a caption that read "Mom's favorite." I looked at the picture for a long time. It didn't look like her mother's house. The kitchen was too modern. The light too warm. Her mother's place was older, cluttered, dimly lit. I knew that kitchen well. We'd spent holidays there. I stared at the reflection in the spoon in the picture, a trick I'd picked up over the years without meaning to. There was someone else there. Just a shape. A silhouette. I zoomed in, but it was too distorted to tell. I told myself it was nothing. A neighbor. A relative. Anyone. I put my phone down, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, she didn't message. No calls, no updates. I sent one text: "How's your mom?" No reply. Hours passed. Then a simple "she's okay." No punctuation. No warmth. I started to feel something shift in me. Not anger. Not even suspicion. Just a dull ache. Like I was watching something inevitable unfold in slow motion. I went through her old messages, old pictures. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for signs. Something I'd missed. Some clue that pointed to this distance, this emptiness. But there was nothing obvious. Just a slow, quiet fading. By the seventh day, I stopped pretending I believed her. I didn't have proof, not yet, but I could feel it. The way she wrote, the pauses in her responses, the way her "I miss you" came hours after I said mine. There's a tone people use when they lie. Not defensive, not emotional, just flat, empty. She'd found that tone. I didn't confront her. I didn't even think about calling. I just watched. That night, I poured a drink and sat by the window. The city outside was quiet. I thought about her mother, frail, soft-spoken, barely able to climb the stairs. I imagined her sitting in bed, waiting for her daughter. I wondered if she even knew her daughter was supposed to be visiting. Maybe she didn't. Maybe the story had never reached her at all. I imagined her somewhere else entirely, my wife, not her mother, sitting in some hotel room, or maybe someone else's apartment, pretending to check in on her sick mother while living another life. I didn't hate her for it. I just felt tired. By then, I'd accepted something quietly. Whatever she was doing, wherever she was, she'd already made her choice long before she left. This wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. She'd thought about it, rehearsed it, probably even told herself it wasn't that bad, that she deserved to get away, that she needed space, that I wouldn't notice. But I did. I noticed everything. The way she'd been more detached lately. The way she stopped touching me when she passed by. The way she'd look at her phone and smile faintly, as if the world inside that small screen mattered more than the one beside her. I went to bed that night, the sheets cold and undisturbed on her side. I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time I'd felt anything resembling love from her. The thought didn't make me sad. It just made things clearer. The next morning, I made coffee for one. Her mug sat untouched on the counter. I left it there. I didn't clean it up. I didn't need to. Something about that empty cup said more than any message she could send. By the end of that week, I stopped waiting for her to come back. I stopped expecting the call, the apology, the excuse. I knew what was coming, even if I didn't know the details. The lie would unravel. It always does. People like her, they think they can hold the world together with silence and partial truths. But silence is fragile. It cracks under the smallest weight. And I knew, with a strange, calm certainty, that when it did, I'd be watching. Not out of spite, not for revenge, just because I wanted to see what honesty looked like when it finally came for her. The first real crack appeared on the 8th day. It wasn't dramatic. It was an invoice. Something small, almost stupid. I'd been sorting through our shared email folder, looking for a utility bill, and there it was, a hotel confirmation. A name I didn't recognize. A city 2 hours away. The check-in date matched the day she left to visit her mother. I stared at it for a long time. The details were plain: the guests, 1 room, 4 nights, paid in advance. No mystery, no room for interpretation. I didn't confront her. I just closed the window and sat there, staring at the blank screen until it dimmed itself into black. I remember how quiet the house was. Even the refrigerator sounded louder than usual. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't angry. I felt something else, something cleaner. Like clarity after a storm. I'd suspected, of course, but proof has a strange way of making suspicion lose its flavor. It becomes solid, heavy, real. I got up, walked to the window, looked at the street. Nothing changed. People walked by, cars passed, the world kept its rhythm. Only mine stopped for a moment. Then it resumed, slightly offbeat. Later that night, she texted me, "Mom's better now. Might come back this weekend." I typed a reply, then erased it. I wanted to write "that's good," but I didn't. I just left the message open, watched the blinking cursor fade. I realized that every word I might send would mean less now. Every sentence would be pretending we still spoke the same language. The following morning, I checked again. The hotel's website, the city, just information, no anger. I wanted to understand the pattern, the logic. She had always been careful, but not meticulous enough. Most people aren't. They leave traces in routine, not emotion. I wasn't collecting evidence. I didn't want to expose her. I only wanted to see how truth arranges itself when left alone. It's not loud. It's ordinary. It hides in receipts, timestamps, call durations, the kind of data that never lies but never screams either. She called that afternoon. I almost didn't answer. Her voice was calm, distant, exactly like I expected. She said her mother was improving. I said I was glad. The conversation lasted 2 minutes. The whole time, I could hear traffic behind her. Not the quiet of her mother's small neighborhood, but city noise, the low hum of movement, the occasional horn. She said she missed me. I said I missed her too. Both lines sounded rehearsed. We hung up politely. I didn't tell anyone. There's a strange power in keeping a secret that doesn't belong to you. It's like holding a mirror that only one person can see into. I kept moving through my days, answering emails, showing up to work, eating dinner alone. Nothing outward changed. Inside, though, I could feel a rearrangement, like furniture being moved in the dark. That night, I sat at her side of the bed. The pillow still smelled faintly of her shampoo. I tried to picture her where she really was, how she looked when she laughed with someone else, how she probably felt, not guilty, not scared, just free. That realization hurt in an unexpected way, not because she was with someone else, but because she could live without the gravity of our shared silence. I thought about when that freedom started. Maybe months ago. Maybe years. I'd been slow to notice. People rarely leave suddenly. They drift until you can't tell where the current began. On the 10th day, a friend mentioned seeing her online, a photo tagged in a restaurant in that same city. Nothing incriminating, nothing explicit, just a group dinner. But the caption had his name, the same one from the hotel invoice. I didn't know him. He wasn't from her circle. I didn't ask questions. The world has ways of revealing itself if you're patient. That evening, I scrolled back through our shared pictures, vacations, birthdays, the slow accumulation of normal life. It felt like flipping through someone else's memories. The smiles looked deliberate, almost painted on. I tried to remember what we'd been talking about right before each photo was taken. I couldn't. I started noticing smaller things, the patterns she had left behind in our life together. The perfume she stopped wearing months ago. The songs she skipped in the car. The way she'd pause before answering questions about work trips. It wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about sequence. Every lie has a rhythm. Once you learn it, you can hear how every note fits. On the 12th day, I realized I hadn't actually thought about her mother once. The woman she was supposed to be caring for. I called out of courtesy. Her mother sounded surprised to hear from me. Pleasant, polite, but surprised. She said she hadn't seen her daughter in weeks. I thanked her and ended the call. My chest felt hollow, but not painful. Just empty space where surprise should have been. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't want the blur. I wanted the details, the clean edges of thought. I made dinner, washed every dish, wiped the counter until it reflected the light. It felt like control, even if it was just movement. Around midnight, I sat down at my desk and opened a blank document. I started writing dates, fragments, little notes, the departure, the texts, the invoice, the photo. Not to keep a record, more to understand the structure. Patterns make sense to me. They reduce noise. When I finished, I deleted it all. I didn't need it anymore. The point wasn't to hold on. It was to see the shape of what had already disappeared. The next morning she texted again, thinking of staying a few more days. Mom needs me. I replied, take your time. She sent a heart emoji. I stared at it. I realized how strange those small symbols are, so simple, so clean, but entirely detached from the weight they pretend to carry. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. By the 14th day, I began to feel calm in a way I hadn't expected. People think discovery brings anger. Sometimes it brings stillness. You stop guessing. You stop needing explanation. You just watch, and the world arranges itself exactly as it's meant to. I went through the house that morning, opening windows, letting cold air in. The air smelled sharper, clearer. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel surrounded by absence. I felt like the house belonged to one person again. She came home that evening, earlier than planned. I heard the suitcase before I saw her. She looked tired, pale. I asked how her mother was. She said, better now. I nodded. She looked around, as if checking whether the house had changed. I could tell she sensed something different in me, though she couldn't name it. Her eyes searched mine for a trace of suspicion. I gave her none. She smiled, and certain. We ate dinner together. It was quiet, polite, perfectly ordinary. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake, listening to her breathing. Slow, even, almost peaceful. I thought about the hotel room, the dinner, the lies. None of it mattered now. The truth had already lived its full life cycle, born, discovered, decayed. What remained wasn't anger or grief. It was understanding. Cold, clean understanding. When I finally closed my eyes, I felt something close to relief. She lasted almost 3 weeks before the story came apart. It wasn't a confession. It never is. It was a slip, an ordinary, human one. Someone from her office mentioned her trip in passing, how she had taken some time off for a getaway. A colleague who didn't know the cover story. The words reached me indirectly, through the loose net of small talk that holds people together. Nothing dramatic, just a brief exchange at a cafe. But I knew. The lie had entered the air where I could hear it. That evening she came home late, said traffic was bad. Her tone was careful again, the same practiced calm. I nodded, poured her a glass of water, asked about work. We spoke about meaningless things. The world's small noises filled the space, the refrigerator's hum, the muted clink of her ring against the glass. I remember thinking how even those sounds seemed rehearsed now. Over the next few days, distance grew without effort. She moved softly through the house, watching me the way someone studies a mirror for cracks. I gave her none. I still made coffee in the morning, still left her mug on the counter, still answered when she spoke. But my words carried no weight. They floated. She could feel it. The guilt was quiet, but it changed the air. The unraveling didn't come from me. It came from her own timing. People who lie start to forget the order of their lies. They mix details, dates, names. I watched her try to rebuild the structure, patching one hole with another. A wrong mention of her mother's doctor, an inconsistent day of return, a missing receipt. Small fractures, invisible to anyone who wasn't listening closely. I was. Not because I wanted proof, because I was curious how long silence could hold. It didn't hold long. On a Sunday morning, her mother called. I answered. She asked how her daughter was feeling after the trip. She sounded cheerful. She said she'd finally received photos from her vacation. I thanked her, said she must be proud. When I hung up, I looked across the room at my wife. She was standing by the window, frozen halfway through emotion. The color had drained from her face. She knew I'd heard, but I said nothing. I just placed the phone on the table and went to make coffee. The sound of the machine filled the silence that followed. After that, something inside her began to sink. She moved slower. Her smile thinned. She tried to repair normalcy, cooked dinner, asked about my day, left the TV on at night. But the rhythm was gone. Every gesture carried weight. Every pause sounded hollow. She was performing life, but the audience had left. I became a shadow in the same space, a quiet witness. I felt no anger, only a strange, steady calm, like watching an old film whose ending you already know. A week later, she found the courage to ask, "Are you upset with me?" I looked up from my book, met her eyes, said no. It was true. I wasn't. She nodded slowly, searching for something in my face. Whatever she hoped to see wasn't there. That night she cried quietly beside me. I didn't move. The distance between us was absolute, but it wasn't hostile. It was clean. The collapse came on its own. The one from the hotel, called her while she was home. His name flashed on the screen while she showered. I saw it by accident. The phone lit up, vibrated once, stopped. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. When she came out, she saw it too. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I gave none. That was the moment she broke. Not because she was caught, but because there was no confrontation, no drama. Just quiet acknowledgement that everything had already ended. The next morning she packed a small bag. She said she needed air. I said nothing. She waited for me to stop her, to ask where she was going. I didn't. She left around noon. I watched from the window as her car disappeared down the street. The house didn't feel emptier. It felt restored. The silence that remained was mine again, and shared, and complicated. For a few days I expected a message, an apology, a justification, something. None came. Instead, I heard about her through other people, mutual friends, coworkers. They said she looked distracted at work, withdrawn, that her name had started to circulate alongside rumors, the kind that spread easily, too easily. I didn't start them. The truth didn't need my help. It simply moved outward, collecting witnesses as it went. She lost the job first. A small firm, strict about appearances. Then came the social part, the friends who stopped inviting her places, the subtle exclusions. People don't like proximity to shame. It's contagious. I didn't rejoice. I didn't intervene. I simply watched from a distance as the scaffolding of her life bent under its own weight. It wasn't cruelty. It was inevitability. Weeks passed. The last time I saw her was by accident. A grocery store, late evening. She didn't see me. She looked thinner, older. Her posture had changed, shoulders drawn, eyes down. She walked like someone trying not to occupy space. For a moment I almost felt pity. Then it passed. The person I'd known was already gone. The one before me was just residue. I left without speaking. That night I returned home, poured a drink, sat by the same window where I'd waited for her message weeks earlier. The city moved as always, steady, indifferent. I thought about how quietly things end. No explosions, no closure. Just the slow fading of noise until only stillness remains. I realized I didn't need answers. I'd already witnessed the only truth that mattered, that deception eventually exhausts itself. It collapses not from exposure, but from the effort of keeping its own story alive. Sometimes I imagine she still tells people versions of what happened. Maybe I was distant, maybe she was lost, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Stories multiply when guilt needs air. I don't correct them. The truth doesn't require my defense. It simply exists, patient and silent. Now the house stays quiet most nights. I still make 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then pour one down the sink. Not out of longing, just ritual. Evidence that time still moves. I sleep well. The kind of sleep that comes only after long noise finally stops. Sometimes I wake before dawn and sit by the window, watching the city lighten. I think of her somewhere out there, learning how to live without an audience. I don't wish her harm. I don't wish her peace either. Some things are better left suspended and finished, quiet. It's been months now. People ask if I've moved on. I tell them there's nothing to move from. There was a lie, and then there wasn't. That's all. The space it left behind isn't emptiness. It's equilibrium. The sound of everything returning to its natural order. Sometimes I reread our old messages, not for sentiment, but for precision. Each word still sits exactly where she placed it, pretending to mean what it once did. I study them the way you'd study an old map, fascinated by how places shift, how borders fade, how the distance between 2 points can grow until no line connects them. When I close my eyes, I can still see her face that last morning, waiting for reaction, for chaos, for something. Instead, she got silence. And that silence followed her out the door, filling the spaces she thought she could escape to. Maybe that was the real ruin, not what happened to her life, but which she carried from mine. The quiet, the understanding that I would never speak of it, never chase, never accuse. Just watch. And in that stillness, everything ended exactly as it should.